Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this. This is an absolute thrill. You're all my favorite.
Renee, so happy to be able to come alongside Books on Bee and help Books on Bee to serve the Hayward community. By the way, I'm Christina Deptula, and I'm part of the volunteer crew with the WeLoveBookstores.org. And today is World Environment Day, June 5th. So very happy to bring you for environmental readers. Bill McKibben will be joining us over a video. He wasn't able to make it, but Cy Montgomery and Jennifer Ackerman and Mary Ellen Hannibal are here today with us in person or on Zoom, live on Zoom. So we're just letting people trickle in as people are joining on Zoom and activating their pictures and their cameras. Oh.
We still have sideways.
You know what? I think you're sideways.
Maybe I am sideways.
Well, this is very odd. Not only are you sideways, but you're also black and white.
I am black and white.
Oh, okay.
I have this old camera. That's how I use Zoom, and I assumed that I could change a setting and change it to black color, but it turns out I can't, and I have just decided to leave it.
God, but it's so classy. I really love it, black and white. I don't know what to do about being sideways, though. What should I do?
I think you're just right. Oh, can you do this the whole time?
Let me mess with this. Okay, that's much worse.
Oh, we need to be able to see your face.
No matter what I do,
The pigs were
sideways.
adorable.
This is like, I guess I don't fit in once again.
Ow!
Yes, now we see you.
Got to see her closet. That's what I love about these.
Yeah, I
Just
know.
Find
It's like,
everyone.
here's my vacuum and all right, now you're right
See your
side.
lifeline.
I see.
Okay,
Here we
now
are
we
in the
see
beautiful
the hand.
store.
Okay, everybody seems to have joined now, so I believe that we're ready to get started. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming out to this event. This is a virtual fundraiser benefit literary reading event through the We Love Bookstores campaign, a group of volunteers in the San Francisco Bay Area who wanted to support independent bookstores in the Greater Bay through all of this coronavirus epidemic and shutdown. And we wanted to plug independent bookstores and encourage people to go and to patronize them during this time. Check your local bookstore. They might be open, they might have curbside pickup. There are ways that you can buy from them even if they are temporarily closed, and they would love your support and love your business. So please do support your independent bookstores as this event is supporting Books on Bee. And thank you very much for joining. And today is World Environment Day, June 5th every year. Thank you very much for coming out for that. And we have 4 authors who are going to be participating who have environmental and nature writing. And also, before we officially get started with everybody introducing themselves, I'm going to say everybody's name and allow them to introduce themselves. And I also would like to acknowledge Black Lives Matter and everything else that is going on in this country right now. Those are important, critical issues. Certainly, you know, Black Lives Matter, and that's part of what is going that's part of what is going on. And so we acknowledge the pain the country is going through, and we acknowledge the harm being done to Black lives and the value of those. And so we've asked all of our authors to mention that and say a little bit about that along with what else they're going to be talking about, as we need to be able to acknowledge that along with the environment. So today, as environmental justice and racial justice are all important. So just hearing and acknowledging what is going on in this country at on multiple levels. And so today in this group, we've got Renee Reddig, the owner and general manager of Books on Bee in Hayward. She's going to be speaking and introducing herself and her store and showing us around a little bit near the end, at the end of this. And our readers today are going to be Bill McKibben, author of Drawdown. He is going to be joining us over a video, which I will show in a little while, as he wasn't available to join us in person. And he talks a lot about climate and climate change and carbon dioxide. And so we have Cy Montgomery. I read her magnificent book, Soul of the Octopus, a few years back. So she's going to be talking about that and about her environmental and nature writing and why you should always say octopuses instead of octopi, as she educated me about in her latest book. And then we have Jennifer Ackerman, who's written The Genius of Birds, the most recent book by her, which I've read, and some others following along on that bird theme. So very happy to have her here. I learned a lot from her magnificent bird book and from her powers of thought and observation. And then last but not least, we have Mary Ellen Hannibal, who wrote the book Citizen Scientist, who's going to be educating us all about the magical, beautiful, inspirational potential for what citizen scientists can do to be able to do research into our environment, to learn about, preserve, and better understand the many magnificent creatures with whom we share our planet. So everybody, thank you very much. And so now I'm going to turn to the authors and allow them to be able to introduce themselves in more detail. So who would like to be able to start?
We're women, so none of us will say first.
All right, well, Cy, since you're here, would you like to get started? Everybody, please welcome Cy Montgomery. You may introduce yourself in a little more detail. And if you have a short section you wanted to read, you can do that, just a paragraph or two.
Okay, great. My name is Cy Montgomery. I live in Hancock, New Hampshire. I'm married to the author Howard Mansfield, and we have a border collie named Thurber, right after James Thurber. I'm the author of 28 books. All of them are about animals, and all of them, I write for adults and for children, all of them about our relationships, the relationships between people and animals, which I think is kind of at the root of the greatest joy available to us as human beings, but its disruption is also the root of all the problems that we're facing today, all the environmental problems, the COVID-19 problem, as we know, arose because people pushed into areas where they should have stayed out of and began eating all the animals. And who, of course, suffers worse when there's environmental problems and the pandemic? Well, it's Black and brown people. All of this is so tightly just woven together. So I'm delighted that my work, along with those of my colleagues here and elsewhere, that we get the fabulous job of helping to heal the world. And what I have been doing this week, while I cheer my friends who are at protests, I'm so grateful to the police who are joining with the protesters in solidarity, while I'm so proud of the people who are helping to rebuild these broken homes and smashed windows of businesses. What I've been doing is I've been volunteering at a turtle hospital. And we all are in our way. We all have gifts that we can bring to heal the wounds of this world.
Yes, definitely. Certainly. It's all about, healing and rejuvenating and sharing this magnificent, beautiful world in which we have the privilege to live. So who else would like to go?
I'll go next.
Okay, yes, Jennifer, please do introduce
Okay.
yourself. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Jennifer Ackerman. I'm the author of The Genius of Birds and also a new book called The Bird Way. And I just wanted to, I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is renowned for some pretty difficult reasons these days. And I wanted to say, in response to this moment to the real horrors of the police brutality and our long, long legacy of profound racial injustice. I wanted to say that I'm reading a really brilliant book by Adrienne Marie Brown called Emergent Strategy. It has a lot of science in it, and it is just amazing. I wanted to just tell you about, there's a chapter called Conversations in which Adrienne Marie Brown describes meeting Grace Lee Boggs when Boggs was 92, and Grace Lee Boggs was an author, an activist, and Brown writes that a core question that Boggs asked of everyone she met was this: what time is it on the clock of the world? And I just wonder how we answer that today. I think it's time for transformative justice. I think it's time for transformative justice for George Floyd and every other Black and Brown and Indigenous person in this country. It's time for reparations, for economic and environmental justice. And I think it's time to listen to Black voices and heed them. So I wanted to just read you a little bit of what Brown writes. We are creating a world we have never seen. We are whispering it to each other, cuddled in the dark, and we are screaming it at people who are so scared of it that they dress themselves in war regalia to turn and face us. Because of our ancestors, because of us, and because of the children we are raising, there will be a future without police and prisons, yes, without harassment and constant fear, without war, hunger, violence, with abundance, where each of our bodies is treated like sacred ground.
Yes, that's beautiful. And that's certainly a hope that we all have for the future. For respect for all human and non-human creatures. And all right, so Mary Ellen, if you would like to say something, please feel welcome to introduce yourself.
So I'm Mary Ellen Hannibal. I'm also an author of The Citizen Scientist, which is my most recent book, and then 4 books before that. I came to write about citizen science, which is regular people like everybody on this call contributing to scientific research from the previous book that I wrote called The Spine of the Continent. And that book is an overview of conservation biology. And conservation biology is trained on trying to save nature, actually. And I reported on efforts to save species in the spine of the continent, which is basically Alaska to Mexico. And as I was doing that work, 2 huge things were preoccupying me. One is beavers. I almost got so overtaken by my love of beavers that I almost wrote a book about beavers. Luckily, another wonderful writer, Ben Goldfarb, wrote a book called Eager Beaver, which I completely recommend. It's a lovely, wonderful book about beavers. Mm-hmm. But what beavers taught me is that ecological degradation is a function of human history. Like, we kind of know that already, but the way that it has increased and increased and increased goes in lockstep with human hegemony over the landscape, over the world. Now, we'll hear from Bill McKibben, which is so fantastic, about climate change, but an equal issue, if not even a bigger issue, is biodiversity loss. There's a huge paper that came out, the Times covered it earlier this week, giving us about 15 years to get a hold of the extinction crisis. You know, we're losing plants and animals at a horrific rate. And it is related to how we live, as Cy alluded to and expressed, how we live and encroach on the environments of plants and animals. And this all does come all the way back to the social justice issues that we're confronting today, and our terrible racial disparities. And here's the one lucky thing. The other thing I was preoccupied with on the spine of the continent was, how are we going to get a hold of this? Because so many people work so hard to try to protect nature, but they don't get enough done. And there's a lot of things in their way. It's not their fault. And so you'll hear two things all the time from natural resource managers. They need more people involved and they need more data. So that's citizen science. That's people involved collecting data. And one thing about citizen science that I cannot emphasize enough, and Christina mentioned before everybody came on that, there's some wonderful COVID, there's some maker spaces popping up all around the country and around the world to do some citizen science platforming around COVID and around everything. Don't make your own database. Don't make your own database. We need to be able to use the data from all around the world in a single kind of databases so that we can all share it. Sharing the data is the magic of citizen science. It's how we connect local, regional, continental, and global issues. But that's the miracle of citizen science. It actually connects personal to global and everything in between. So I'll just say two more things about citizen science. The act of doing citizen science, I consider an act of resistance against colonialism, period, because we have colonized the earth, we've colonized the territory of other species, and also we've colonized the territories of indigenous people whose lifeways supported and were supported by those species. So when I do citizen science, it's an act of observation of life, and that my observation becomes part of a database that then can be used to make an argument in court to protect nature and to give that silent world, it's not really silent as we know, we love to hear bird song, for example, a voice. So if you'd like to resist colonialism, which we all would, I think, become a citizen scientist because it's profoundly democratic. The other thing that I'll stop after this is that personally, when you're lying in bed in the middle of the night and you're freaked out, which I think is really rational right now, and there's despair and loneliness in our overcrowded world, citizen science is a way, if you think about it and you make it so, to really connect your own individual observations, even the ones you're having in the middle of the night, with what's happening in the globe. But we do it through, observations using smartphones or taking data or restoring an ecosystem, pulling up invasive plants or planting native plants, helping turtles. I think that's citizen science. You go and you help at a turtle hospital, that's a citizen scientist because you're helping to sustain a very vital part of the web of life. And that's what citizen science is all about. So I think it can do everything, and it's there, and it's free. So I'm a citizen science booster, in case you haven't noticed.
Yes, definitely. I'm certainly a supporter of citizen science as well. Just all of the creativity, the resistance, the democratic nature of that, just getting people involved in the science that impacts their lives. That is very awesome. Thank you to each of you so much. And so now I'm going to show a video from Bill McKibben, as he's going to speak to he's going to introduce himself and his work and speak to each of the points that you've made. Let me get into screen share. And please let me know if this is working, okay, will you please allow me to do screen sharing or make me the host temporarily, please?
Getting there, 2 seconds.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to be able to bring this Bill McKibben video to you very soon. I have about a 5-minute video. So we'll share with you some beautiful nature right outside my window. I'm hearing the wind rustling through the leaves of an avocado tree and looking at some green blackberries on a blackberry vine. So yeah, just very glad to be a part of the natural environment right here. Okay, so now I am the host.
Should be good now, Hannah.
Okay, yes, thank you. And I will share this Bill McKibben's 5-minute video with you now. Let me get that. Okay. Let's see. I had it.
It says you've started screen sharing. This is good.
Okay, yes, I've got that. Now I need to find the Bill McKibben video, which I had movies, and maybe if I get out of. Okay. Definitely see you. I've got to. Be able to share this. Got to be able to share this video. Video folders. That's funny. It was here. Yes, I very much apologize. If somebody would like to make a few remarks in the meantime.
Well, two things for citizen science. If you would like to do citizen science, there's two things to do. One is to go to a website called scistarter.org. It's SCI Starter, STARTER.org, and you can just search on what kind of project you might be interested in. There's a bunch of COVID projects. Now, most of those COVID projects, you are donating information about yourself to hospitals and to researchers, and that's one way to do citizen science. It's just to really help collect data. But then there's many other ways you can be more actively involved. And to be actively involved, a very good baseline tool is iNaturalist.org. And iNaturalist, you get onto that by signing up on a desktop or a laptop. And then you put the app on your phone, and you can make observations with your phone of things you see in nature. And you know, Jennifer's of course a huge bird expert, and I've become, a lot of us here probably on this call live in the Bay Area, so we're just seeing the end of our seabirds now. They're going migrating. They're leaving the Bay Area, but they've been with us for a few months, so I'm sad to see them go, but we're getting our passerines coming in. And just the other day, I found there was a drama at Crissy Field down on San Francisco Bay with a loon that seemed to be injured. And I don't know eventually what happened to the loon, though I spent most of the day trying to help it. But people had caught that loon in various different places on the beach and in the water on iNaturalist. So at the very least, there's information out there now for people to help put together the story of what happened to that loon. And we all helped. You know, I mean, there's a tremendously good feeling to that.
I love that you said that. I would add that that it's getting more people involved in looking at a problem that I think is going to find a new way to solve it. And this is one of the things in Jennifer Ackerman's book that struck me, her new book, The Bird Way, is that getting more women in the field of bird behavior actually revealed a whole bunch of stuff that no one else had seen before, because of course they were just looking at the male birds. So Jennifer, maybe you'd like to talk about that a little bit while we look for Bill's video.
Yeah, I absolutely. The field of ornithology was pretty much exclusively male or predominantly male for a very long time, and mostly men were looking at what male birds were up to. And it's really only more recently, since women have joined the field, that we've begun to understand what a critical role that female birds play. And one of the big discoveries is that female birds sing. You know, we used to think that complex, elaborate song was pretty much the domain of male birds. And now we understand that in 2/3 of songbird species, females sing too, and they sing songs that are just as complex and for similar purposes as male songs. So it has really kind of turned the field on its head in a wonderful way.
Wow,
And
that's fascinating. I'm very happy that we've discovered female bird songs. And so, yeah, that's a wonderful discovery, just, you know, bringing out more gender equality amongst all species. So I found the Bill McKibben video, and so I'm going to go into screen sharing. So right now I've got the screen up, and I should be able to play this video now. Let me know can everybody see Bill McKibben?
We're not seeing your
No.
screen as shared.
No,
Okay, let me see. I'm going to go into the screen share now. Okay, yeah. So people can see my screen.
I see a little circle. There we go.
Got it.
Okay, so everybody, we're going to see Bill McKibben introduce himself and answer the questions this is about a 5-minute long video. So everybody, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Son B, what a pleasure to be with Jennifer and Mary Ellen doing this work. Let me begin by saying that, as you've all figured out, local bookstores are the most important thing that there are. And having watched them get through the challenge from Amazon and the challenge from Barnes and Noble and the challenge from everything else, I'd be damned if we're going to let the challenge from coronavirus take them down. We all need to be supporting our local bookstores, so thank you for this. It's a really weird moment right now. This is the strangest upheaval of my long lifetime. And I think that we should take a few lessons from it as we think about it. And I think some of those lessons are pretty clear. One of them is that reality is real. Look, I've spent the last 30 years trying to argue to people that you can't make physics or chemistry negotiate or compromise, that you have to deal with their brute reality and take action to slow the flow of carbon into the atmosphere. In the same way that the microbe is now teaching us that you cannot make biology negotiate. It doesn't matter if the president calls it a hoax or says it's going to be over by Easter. It's in charge. If it says wear a mask, then wear a mask. If it says stay at home, stay at home. It sets the limits, not us. Useful thing to be reminded, even if painful, that reality is in charge. Second thing, for those of us who think about science, a corollary to that is that speed matters. Those countries that cut down their virus curve quickly, that flatten their curve, get out of this a lot better than those of us who delayed and dithered around like our country. Now we face enormous trauma, both economic and real. We've got 100,000 dead bodies to show for our delay. The analogy to climate change couldn't be clearer. We've wasted 30 years, and now we have to move with enormous speed, and that's going to require an immense amount of work. Third lesson, and this really is the key in a lot of ways, social solidarity really matters. The kind of movements that we're going to need to get out of the hole that we're in are going to involve all of us. We have to get over the idea that markets will solve our problems, or that if we just change a few of our own individual habits, we'll be okay. It's important to change individual habits, but we shut down the whole economy and emissions only fell about 15%. That should be a reminder that it's going to take more than just some people deciding not to fly or something. Nobody flew, and we still didn't get a handle on this problem. It should tell us that it's hardwired into the guts of our system, and so we're going to need to take those guts out and change out the coal and the gas and the oil for sun and wind. We're going to need to retrofit our buildings to make them efficient. We're going to need to do that hard work. We can only do it as a society, not as individuals. We have to do it, come together and build the kind of movements necessary to make it happen. And we can do a lot of that even while we're at home during a pandemic. That's a lot of movement building, is just reaching out to other people, whether it's on Zoom or on Facebook or on email or whatever it is, and making the case, signing people up to do things like hold banks accountable forced divestment from fossil fuels, on and on and on. These are all doable things when we work together and we're making serious progress on them. The events of the last 2 weeks are a reminder, though, that it takes all of us. And a reminder that when we talk about the environment, we're talking about more than just the air. You know, George Floyd was killed saying, "I can't breathe." And he couldn't because someone was kneeling on his neck. Other people can't breathe because there's a coal-fired power plant in their neighborhood, or because their air is just so filthy. In Delhi, we think that there's 2.5 of the 5 million children in Delhi have irreversible lung damage just from breathing the air. So we have to work together, and we have to guard most closely those who are most vulnerable and least protected, who are also the ones who generally have done the least to cause the problems that we face. And if we take those maxims as our touchstones, then we can make a lot of progress going forward. I've been working on this for 30 years since I wrote the first book about climate change. What were warnings then are bulletins from the front line now. We don't have any time to waste. We do, and here's where I'll leave you, have a lot of people now engaged in this fight. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that we'll be getting more as the next years go on. We need them very badly, and we need to be acting in real solidarity. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you very much to Bill McKibben for participating in this and for, and for those thoughts. So now that everybody's introduced themselves and talked a little bit about their work and what's going on, I've got a bit of a Q&A portion. So yeah, variety of questions, and I'm going to ask different people. So So here's a question for anyone and everyone. What can people do to help preserve the environment while we're all sheltering in place? At least a lot of us.
Well, you can do citizen science. If you have a smartphone or a camera and a computer, you can make observations of plants and any animals, bugs, birds, any mammals that you see, and put them, upload them onto iNaturalist, and that is really helpful to for all sorts of things. So it's helpful for local causes. It's helpful for scientists and researchers who are asking all kinds of different questions. But it's also, it's going to be data that we want. Like, for example, as people will start to investigate the proclivity for African American people to get COVID more readily than Caucasians, we'll want to look at data actually to see where do people live, how old are they, what kind of biodiversity do they live near, because we know that biodiversity is helpful for people's health. So if you live in a place that has more greenery, you tend to have more health. And if you live in an underserved community, you tend to have less greenery. And that it's not just the greenery, it's all the way down to the microbes in the soil when there's less plants around. So we'll be able to start making arguments, that it is a primary right of people to have a lush physical environment planted around them. But you have to be able to show data to make that case. So if you go out and you take a lot of pictures of plants, and also then we want to see those plants over time, because seeing the plants over time and also when we see, like when I see those loons at Chrissy Field, it helps to track climate change impacts on biodiversity, because as climate change is encroaching and accelerating, all of nature is changing its seasonal cycles. And we need to be able to keep track of that to figure out how it's happening and what we could do about it.
Yeah, if I could just pipe in here, I think the citizen science projects related to birds are also just vital in this way. We have to monitor birds to know how healthy the populations are, and citizen scientists are essential for that. I would also say that during this time of the pandemic and also these past 2 weeks that there are a lot of rollbacks of environmental regulations that are going on kind of behind our back by this administration. And, you know, especially the Endangered Species Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And I would encourage people to speak up and vote. Call or write your congressional representatives to voice your opposition to these rollbacks, and also support legal challenges by states and environmental groups that are, you know, with letters to the editor, with donations. And I guess I would also say this is a good time to become a monthly sustainer to Black-led environmental and climate justice organizations, which really address the root causes of environmental injustice and climate change. So it's a really good time to put your donations there and to do it monthly rather than a one-off, because it gives those organizations the capacity to plan for the future and gives them much more power over the long term. So I would particularly encourage people to check out the Climate Justice Alliance, which campaigns for implementing practices and policies that really support ways of working and living in harmony with the planet. So it's my feeling that until we're all safe and focused on these big problems, you know, none of us are safe.
Yeah, amen. I would say to both of you, we have got to get regime change. We have got to get on board the Green New Deal. And we now, many of us now have time to put into this. And like Bill said, we really need a broad change. We need to tear out the guts of our economy to change it, because it's built on oil, and we have to make huge changes. But that doesn't negate the fact that we do have a lot of power individually, and that we mustn't feel helpless because we make a choice for the environment every time we have a meal, every time we get in our car or buy a new car or ride our bicycle. Every time you see a turtle crossing the road, you have an opportunity to pick that animal up and not just save that animal, but the next 50 years, that lady turtle is going to be laying maybe, you know, 25 to 100 eggs. So we have at our fingertips a lot of power, and now we have the time that we can start to exercise it. So that's the good news.
Yes, that is wonderful. So, you know, start, you know, everything from working at the larger level, working to change society and to change policy, and then, you know, participating in citizen science and discovering and learning, you know, down to, you know, just simply picking the turtle up out of the road or saving worms. I like to save ants from the shower before I take a shower, or save worms from the road when I'm bicycling or walking. So just action at all levels is important. So who should we listen to? I mean, other than all of yourselves, obviously, for good information about the environment and what's going on.
Well, I try, it's actually quite hard to, you know, it's easy enough to stay up with kind of, you know, the big groups, and Jennifer, alluding to the bird citizen science, eBird and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology are the mother of all citizen science.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of data accumulated about birds through Cornell and is done so much for all kinds of creatures. But it is hard, you know, you can sign up for environmental news at kind of a national or international level from, you know, publications like GRIST is great, or I like the Center for Biological Diversity. I don't always agree with them, but they cover an awful lot. But here in San Francisco, I try to get, I'm on the mailing list for the Department of the Environment. And I try to know when there's hearings at City Hall that have to do with regulations or anything to do with, well, I mean, housing here is a huge issue, right? Obviously, but it's not such an easy one, you know, to just clear away all of the environmental restraints to build more housing for more people. You know, we got to do this carefully. We got to do it the right way. But it takes a bit of effort to stay in touch with what's going on in your local world. But that's where you really make a really big difference. Your one voice at City Hall in San Francisco is paid attention to very, very much.
Yeah, that is fabulous. Good to know. Never underestimate your one voice.
Well, your local government. You know, Obama, you probably all read Obama's talk or heard him on Zoom talk about this moment in time and about systemic racism in police departments. And he said, the change happens on local levels. He said, do it locally. And I think that that's really a really important place to focus your energies, is on your own local neighborhood, town, city, state.
I think also I don't know how many young folks that we have tuning in or whatever you do with these machines right now, but children can be very powerful. I know a number of kids who can't vote, but they have got a plastic bag ban in their town. Kids who are raising thousands of dollars for to clean up the seas, kids who are very active in climate change. And just because you can't vote yet doesn't mean that you don't have tremendous power. In fact, sometimes people will listen to you if you're 10 years old more carefully than if the person is, 40 years old, because kids do matter. We love our children. We're always talking about, we've got to do this for our children. Well, let's hear from our kids. I think children often realize some of the most important stuff that adults may have forgotten, like our connection to the natural world, like the fact that animals think, feel, and know. Every kid knows that. For every kid, the frog is a he or a she, not an it. It's only when people get older that they start talking about a snake or a bird as an it. I actually had an editor change my she, talking about a bird who had just laid an egg, and changed it to it. So, children know a lot of the truths of the world, and they can give the wake-up call.
Yes, definitely. I'm glad to hear young voices, a lot of very inspirational young people out now speaking for the environment.
I just wanted to pipe in here. There's I've been very delighted to see all of the activity that's been around Black people in nature, Black birders. I think that's a great source of information now too. There's some wonderful round tables happening, and there's a presentation tonight called Black Women Who Bird.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that social media is just offering us now a pretty wonderful stream of information. Not every aspect of social media, but this thread in particular with birding while black, Blacks in nature, and Black Women Who Bird. It's really, I think, a terrific new voice.
That's great.
Okay, great. And we have a comment from Glenn Barrett, who wants to acknowledge that we live on native land here in the Bay Area. And he encourages us to check out Sogorea Te Land Trust. I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing that. But an urban indigenous woman-led community organization that facilitates the return of Chochenyo and Karkin Ohlone lands in the San Francisco Bay Area to indigenous stewardship. And so I will share that link, Sogorea Land Trust, in the chat. So Sogoriate-landtrust.org. So
Land trusts are also a great way to sort of keep up with what's going on regionally. So most land trusts, a lot of land trusts are very aware of indigenous issues, and a lot of them work to try to bring land back into native control. Not all of them do, of course. But as those land trusts try to acquire more land and try to then manage it in certain ways, like for connectivity, these go to the heart of how we create, a very vibrant, connected landscape that helps species thrive. I mean, we live here in, I'm not sure what it's like in other states, Virginia, where you are, Jennifer. California has some fantastic land trusts right in the Bay Area. And just actually getting on their mailing list will keep you informed of a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do up here in New Hampshire as well. Here in Hancock, where we have about 1,500 people, more than half our land is conservation land, and our water supply has almost no treatment needed because, we don't even have like a treatment plant or anything. I think we have like a filter in case like a dead bird falls in, but the land is keeping it clear, and we have beautiful water. And we most of us who aren't drinking town water, we've got wells, and our wells are safe and clean, and we can thank land trusts and other conservation organizations for that.
Wow.
Wonderful. And so on, and back to a previous topic, we have a comment from Steve. He says, why would scientists make those assumptions about female birds? That's sickening. He didn't realize there was so much sexism in science, and is glad it's coming around. So yeah,
I would like to pipe in there too. And it's not just sexism in this world. It's also geographical bias. And I think, we've founded a lot of our bird knowledge on studies that have been done in the northern temperate areas of the US and Europe. And it turns out that for most of the world's species, these rules don't hold. So we are now just overcoming these geographical biases too, and realizing that, oh wow, in tropical species, birds do things differently, and I'm sure that's true for other of animals as well, that we've had this northern temperate lens, and suddenly we're realizing, oh, these are not what we thought.
And that's why it's so great when we get diverse views, diverse sources of data.
Right.
My first book was called Walking with the Great Apes, and it was about Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey and Birute Galdikas. And these three women, Jane went in the field in 1960, and there were no women in ethology. They just weren't. And these three women, Jane starting, completely transformed the field because they saw things in a different way. Mm-hmm. This is why we need more indigenous voices, more Black and brown voices. We need eyes and ears and senses and backgrounds from everywhere, particularly as we tackle huge problems that are going to need every kind of mind and every kind of viewpoint to report in and help us.
Definitely, yes. And so here's a question for Cy and Jennifer, but Mary as well. Is it, what drew you to want to write about your particular topic? What really fascinated you about octopuses or about birds?
You want to go first, Cy?
Boy, well, I've written 28 books, so each one of those is pretty much on a different animal, but octopuses, my God. I mean, they're so irresistible. I'd spent my career writing about pink dolphins and apes and snow leopards and tree kangaroos, and I wrote a whole book about our pig. But most of animal life on this earth is actually marine invertebrate. Well, I felt like I should get to know a marine invertebrate, because even though they're so unlike us, if you talk about us being all the animals alive on Earth, they're more like the typical animal than we are. And how could you resist this alien compared to us creature who, you know, has a baggy, boneless body. It can squeeze through an opening the size of an orange and taste with its skin, and has blue blood and venom like a snake and ink like an old-fashioned pen and tastes with even its eyelids. So yeah, that topic had appealed to me for a long, long time, but I didn't think I was ready to write about it until I began in 2011. I also didn't feel like people were ready to read about it, to read about consciousness in a marine invertebrate. But to my delight, they were.
That's great. And I certainly enjoyed your book. And it stuck with me that they were octopuses and not octopi, because it was a Greek word and not a Latin word.
Yes, good for you. Thank you.
Yes, that as well as all of the different facts about the animals and all of the feelings, all of the different personalities. I didn't realize the extent to which octopuses had different personalities.
Oh, they totally do. And they recognize us individually. They recognize us by looking up through the water at our faces, the same way that we recognize other humans by looking at their faces. And what attracts me so much is the fact that they are so different, and yet they are so like us also, and that you can be friends with an octopus.
Definitely. I would love to meet more octopuses.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, what drew you to be interested in birds?
Well, first of all, I just have to say Soul of the Octopus is just one of my favorite books of all time. And it's just such a beautiful exploration of consciousness and the animal world. And so hats off to Cy. So I've loved birds since I was a child and went bird watching with my father on the C&O Canal in Washington, D.C. And, you know, I was fascinated by birds. Just they're the most visible form of wildlife around us. But it was really only later as a science writer that I began to grow curious about what makes birds tick. You know, how do they communicate? Why do they sing so gloriously? And how do they learn their songs? You know, what's going on in their minds? How do they make decisions? You know, what are they thinking? And are they thinking? So I explored this, and I just found study after study suggesting that birds are really capable of far more intelligent behavior than we ever imagined, really using cognitive skills that are in more ways closer to our chimp relatives, our primate relatives like chimps and orangutans than to a bird's reptilian relatives. So you know, I really wanted to share this quite amazing new view of birds and with a broad audience. Is, you know, we used to think that birds were you know, pretty much simple-minded flying automatons. You know, they were driven solely by instinct, and that their brains were so small and primitive that they were really capable of only the simplest mental processes. And, you know, now we know that a bird's teeny tiny brain is just this miracle of miniaturization. It's really dense with neurons. It's super efficient, and it's really capable of these incredible mental feats. So, you know, now we understand birds can think logically and reason like on par with young children. They can solve complex problems they've never seen before. They can make and use their own tools. They can understand basic principles of physics like cause and effect. And they can pass along cultural traditions. Now, this just fascinates me, you know, whether they're modes of song or styles of tool making. So, you know, birds are incredibly socially intelligent creatures like octopuses. They can recognize people and, you know, by face, and they use some of the same brain circuits that we do to recognize people by face. So, you know, birds do all of this with a brain barely the size of a nut. And that just, you know, blows me away and makes me want to write about birds forever.
Definitely, yes. In your book, I was quite amazed by your description of bowerbirds. If people want to Google that or look that up, birds who build magnificent structures using found objects, a lot of times colored objects, in order to be able to impress other birds whom they're courting.
Yes. It's really astounding that birds actually seem to have an aesthetic sense too. And one of my favorite examples, so they're bowers that are usually little archways or structures made of sticks and adorned with an array of colorful or shiny objects. And they really are theaters of seduction to woo females, to draw them in. And my favorite example of the decoration of a bower was a bower built by a spotted bower bird, and it built its bower next to the house of a stained glass artist. And this bower was filled with little shards of stained glass that the bird had arranged by color, just like a mosaic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Wow, that's wonderful. So just one more question as we're coming near the end of this event. I would like to know from everybody, all three of you, how do you effectively write a story about non-human life in a way that keeps humans interested?
Well, don't you think that we're automatically interested in the lives of others? I mean, children's first attention is animals. Their dreams are filled with animals. And I think if you first can find a point of connection, that's where things take off. I observed when I used to love watching people watch the octopus, and in particular Octavia. She had laid eggs, and I watched some teenage girls coming through the aquarium, and they were going like, "Oh, what's that? Oh, it's an octopus. Oh, gross!" And I said, "Oh, but look at that. You see those little things that look like grains of rice hanging from those are her eggs. That's a mother octopus." And man, it was like you flipped a switch. Bam. They were like, oh, she's taking care of those eggs. Isn't that wonderful? And so I think once you find that point of connection, and we all have it because we are all related, obviously. We're all related to the first single-celled thing that appeared. We can take it from there naturally. We were hunter-gatherers until very recently. Now we're shopper-gatherers, but we still remember, I think, deep in our hearts and our psyche, that other creatures matter.
Definitely, yes. We're all sharing a planet, and hopefully we all see wildlife and can be naturally curious, and we all share some biological needs to be able to eat and breathe and keep ourselves warm and cool. So yeah, I would definitely say there are some natural points of connection.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think that that we are creatures who relish wonder, and the wonder of what we're learning about other animals is a draw in and of itself. That it's just it's astonishing to learn about the taste that an octopus possesses, where it is on its body, and I think that the similarities between our own species and others, other kinds of animals, and also the differences. I think both of them are, fascinating. That we like to learn about how animals are like us. We used to think humans were unique in tool making, reasoning, emotions. Language like communication. Well, it turns out that birds can do all those things too. But also, birds and octopuses, they have ways of knowing that go beyond our own. There's forms of genius in the natural world that just go beyond our own. And I think of the navigational abilities of birds, for instance. So I think those kinds of things really capture our, sense of wonder.
Well, I've been more agnostic about individual species. I'm really fascinated by the systems and the way ecology works. I'm writing a book about butterflies that I've been working on for a long time. Part of the reason I was inspired to, I don't think anybody's going to come up with consciousness in butterflies. I think they really don't have very much of a brain. However, they do amazing things, and they're moderate. One of the things that fascinates me is that they moderate between that physical world of physics, of the atmosphere, and then the biological world, as insects do. And so that's really fascinating. But a few years ago, I was catching up with my friend Sergio Avila, who was a jaguar biologist who I profiled in my Spine of the Continent book. And I said, Sergio, what are you working on now? And he said, I'm doing this big monarch butterfly project. And I said, you're doing a monarch butterfly project, Sergio? You are a jaguar biologist. And he said, I've gotten more conservation done with monarchs in 3 months than I have with jaguar in 15 years. And I said, why? He said, because people are afraid of jaguars and they don't see them. And everybody sees butterflies, and a rancher that will shoot a jaguar will cry if they'll tear up telling you about when they see butterflies. And I really listened to that. Like, jaguar are amazing, amazing beings. But it's harder. I think it is harder to relate to them. We're scared of them, for example. So, I mean, butterflies, almost everybody has the privilege of seeing butterflies at some time. And butterflies, so far, so good, are still in most of the places where we go. So they're still here. And they're very important functionally.
So definitely wonderful. I am always amazed by the beauty of monarch butterflies. And I really loved the poetic writing in your book, just how elegant your descriptions were of the bay, of marine areas, just of everything going on. It was like reading poetic literature in your nonfiction book about citizen science. So where can people go to find out about how to get involved in citizen science projects before and after coronavirus?
I actually really think, so there's iNaturalist, you can dig in right now today and just start being one today with iNaturalist. You can go to scistarter.org and look for projects. But honestly, I have found it more effective to just use your search engine and look for projects near where you live. There's also something called Zooniverse, which is fabulous. And Zooniverse is something you can do, citizen science, you can just do with a computer. And it's really interesting. I do it, but I kind of advocate getting outside more. Also, it can be hard to become, really attached to an activity. You have to kind of find your tribe, and that can be the species that you're interested in. It can be people that are doing it. Birders are great citizen scientists, and they do field trips, and a lot of them are very helpful teachers. And so birding is actually a great way into citizen science. So Googling things.
Yes, wonderful. And so unfortunately, sadly, we're coming to the end of our event. So I wanted just to thank everybody again for participating, everybody for coming to support Books on Bee. And I wanted to invite Renee Reddick, the owner and manager of Books on Bee, to come and to say a few words about the store.
Love to be unmuted. Okay.
Okay, yes.
Well, I could say something about the store, but what I want to say is, Jennifer, Mary Ellen, Cy, your personalities already come through your book so beautifully, but to actually have an experience with you is going to heighten my experience forevermore. You've got so much passion and color in your words already, and to have a moment with you like this, that you would take your time and talents to support this little independent bookstore, is incredibly humbling, and I'm really grateful that everyone has come forward to support the store. We're just about to get to our 3-year anniversary of just signing the lease. We were just about to go start building the store 3 years ago, and the community came forward, and the taproot became deeper at that moment. But this has created this webbing of infrastructure, of roots, that I feel like we're going to survive this no matter what storm lies ahead. I needed this right now. Just the interconnectivity of you reminding me that we're all in this together. I've been very shut off since our last day that we were open was Pi Day, 3/14. We always celebrate, and excuse for pie. You get kind of cast adrift because you come into the store alone with your mask, and you answer phone calls, and you get to see a few door ditch deliveries every once in a while, but I'm seeing my whole tribe here too. And this is the best romper room experience I could wish for right now. I'm ready to get my shoulder back into it and get ready to make this store its community hub again. It needs its own ecosystem, and it comes down to the people who care and are curious and passionate and love your works, good authors. That's what I get from when I read all of your works is I'm reminded to pay attention. And that feels like that's what the great thing about this moment. If we have time to just settle down to what we need in our basic truths of just remembering that it's all us, I guess. I mean, that's why I chose to wear, oh dear.
Yes.
Is it backwards? Did it come up backwards to you?
No,
No,
it's
it's
perfect.
good.
All right.
All we have is each other, mutual aid.
That's kind of everything. So I wanted to be Books on Bee, not only because you can guess what street we're on, I suppose, but I love honeybees, and each one of them has their part. Most of them are female, and together they make something magical, and they know how to keep busy. So for me, that's a bookseller. So we're going to now enter our third year feeling as if we have a better chance than ever, and I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Renee and Cy and Jennifer and Bill McKibben and Mary Ellen Hannibal. And I have a adorable Books on Bee bag right here for the last
Yeah,
book.
I stamped that.
Books on Bee. So
Thanks,
thank you very
Christina.
much. I just ordered Where the Crawdads Sing. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. And so one tradition that we have to end these Zoom events that we discovered as we went along is that the host will unmute everybody so we can all applaud and say thank you as the meeting is ending.
Ooh.
So I think Lara will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Good going, Christina.
Yes, thank you very much. Good
love
going,
you,
everybody.
Renee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
It was
Thank
great.
you.
I love you. Thank you. Oh, I'll see your eyes over the mask soon. Oh, and I see Katie, and I see Cheryl, and I see Glenn, and I see Andrea. Oh, thank you, all of you.
Right back at you.
Oh my gosh, you don't even know. Good pig. We could get talking on that for a little while too. But, I'm just thrilled that you would even choose to take the time to do this for here. I just thank my lucky stars.
Oh, we're all honored. I mean, we'd be dead in the water without stores like I
It's a
know
little
lot of-
symbiotic,
Absolutely.
I suppose. So yes, I always, when people say they don't know what to read, I'm like, do you want to get enthusiastic about things that are already happening all around you? You want to kind of like look up and down and around about your world around you? You do. It's so empowering to feel connected. I just keep using that same word, and yet it feels like it's going to be the theme of the day. And as we go forward to
Yeah.
help heal this broken world, that's what's exciting, is we can choose to pick up what we want to take forward into the new world we have to rebuild. There was a lot already not healthy and not well, so we can make it better if we all just get ready to do our part.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Renee.